Hello, everybody. Welcome to Easel Live. This is our very first time opening this up to all Inventables Easel users, and we are really excited for everyone that was able to join us today. Previously, we've just done Easel Live sessions for Easel users who have had their Easel account for 30 days or less, and this is the first time we've decided to see, hey, maybe we'll see if this is something that other people are interested in as well. So thank you for taking the time to join us. My name is Mo. I work in the customer success department here at Inventables, and I will be walking you through a project today that we have spent some time here in the office trying to refine and get to know a little bit better. And that project, as I'm sure you're aware, are inlaid cutting boards. Now, even though we're using the cutting board as the project, we're mostly going to talk about how to make inlays that fit really well and have good finish on them and that you can use for multiple projects. But we thought the cutting board was kind of a cool idea with all the holiday parties coming up and with a lot of gifts that are going to be given in the next few weeks. We thought it would be a great idea to show you a customized gift that you can make for friends, family, anyone in your life, as you know, everyone needs extra cutting boards. It's just kind of a fact. So before we get started, I wanted to show you some of the examples that we have and talk to you a little bit about the kind of project we're going to be making. This one my friend Sam made, and it's got the shape of Illinois, the state of Illinois, with a little heart over Chicago, which is great. This is this is a walnut wood that we used for the cutting board itself. And then the Paduke, thank you to everyone who corrected me in previous Easel Live videos, the Paduke, and then I believe this one here is, not exactly sure what wood this is. It looks like maybe it might be like a babinga. So this is one project. This cutting board also shows you the template that you are going to use. If you're interested in grabbing that template, you can go ahead. There's a link in the bottom of this video, and if you click the little info button in the top right corner of your screen, not sure if I'm pointing the right way, there you can access the Easel template there as well. The other one that Sam here made is a cutting board that says eat well in Italian, and this is a cool one because it uses text, and text is a little bit trickier. You know, the more complex your inlay gets, the more important it is to work with some of the tolerance settings and the different things we're going to cover to make sure you get a really good fit without being too loose or not be able to get your pieces in. So we can show you how to do complex shapes like this in the tutorial today. And then the one other thing I wanted to show you was this shape uses the same template. This is an unfinished walnut cutting board that you can see the difference really quick in the style. So we'll go through some finishing techniques so you can get that really polished look that looks super professional as opposed to the unfinished version that we have here. And as I mentioned, all of these cutting boards I've just shown you are using a template that is available. The template is good for Carvey. You can also use it in Xcarve, obviously, but it is designed to work in the full Carvey work area. If you're interested in making a bigger cutting board, like this one here that my friend John made, this was made on an Xcarve. You could still probably carve these smaller parts out for the inlay itself can be done on a Carvey, but you can do these bigger sizes as well. So like I said, we're just gonna walk you through some of the techniques that you can use and apply them to different projects. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about terminology just so we can make sure everyone's on the same page. As I said, this is a slightly more advanced project that we're working on today. So if you're interested in learning more about some of the techniques that we're going to show today in Easel, you can feel free to check out our Thanksgiving garland and our ornament Easel Live videos, and those will walk you through some of the more basic Easel tools that we'll be using today. So for this project, we're going to have two parts that we're talking about. The first is the insert. This is usually done on a thinner hardwood. You can see this is a 16th inch here. You can also use inlay strips if you're interested in doing that. We have those available in our store. And the insert is going to be the piece that fits into and actually makes that inlaid look. This part here is what we call the pocket. And you know, again, these terms might be used differently for different people. We're going to call them the insert and the pocket for ease of going through this webinar. And the insert will fit inside the pocket when you are all finished with your project. So pocket is the hole that you will have in your final product, and then the insert is the quote unquote inlay that fits inside the pocket. So without further ado, I'm going to start my screencast with you guys and walk you through some of the things that you should know about when you're getting ready for this project. So let me go ahead, bear with me a second here as I pop on over to our project page. So this is the template here that you can use. We have it posted in the forum. You can also feel free to access it by going into the projects page of our website. And this particular one here, we've just got the 6x12 cutting board template. You can see there are some pictures of the cutting boards that we've already made. And just like any other easel project that is posted on our forum, if you see this blue Open an Easel button, that's a quick and easy way to go ahead and get the project that you need. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up here. All right, so now I've got Easel open. You can see my machine is set up to be a carvy. I've got the smart clamp here in the corners to make sure I don't hit that. And anytime you open up a project from somebody else, you'll see that it's not quite possible to edit or carve this project. So what you have to do is go here, File, and make a copy. So I can have my own version of the cutting board template. Awesome, so now this is one that I can go ahead and edit. And since it's mine, I'm gonna go ahead and rename it here. Today we're gonna be working on a shape of Illinois, you know, since we're located here in Chicago. And so we're gonna start with just a basic Illinois cutting board. Oh, that's nice. All right, so I've got my project renamed, and now I'm all set to start working on my design. So now that I've got this done, let's talk a little bit about material. You can see that this defaulted to walnut, which is great. If you're ever interested in changing your material, obviously you can come up here to the materials section, choose the material that you want. We don't have all of the materials listed in here that you can use on your machine, but it's good to find something that works equivalent to what you're looking to do. In this case, I'm going to stick with the walnut. If you're interested in purchasing it, you can always click on the cart that hovers over the icon as well, and you'll be able to get right to the product page to purchase that if you're interested. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys really quickly our materials store. You can see here that there are a wide variety of materials that we sell. When you're looking at doing a cutting board specifically, I would advise you to stick with the hardwoods that we offer. And you can use these narrow your results options on the left-hand side of the screen to go ahead and pull up all the hardwoods that we offer. And we also, you'll see I've also selected here the inlay strip. Inlay strips are a really easy way to go ahead and just add those directly. You'll see there's some really beautiful patterns. So if you're looking to do something with some kind of a stripe or maybe like a chevron or something, you can go ahead and use these inlay strips that work really well. So for the cutting board, we would advise you to use a thicker piece for the physical board itself. In this case, like I said, we're dealing with a walnut. I would suggest maybe going with a 1/2 inch or maybe even a 3/4 inch, depending on how thick you want the board to be. And then for the decorative part, I would go ahead and stick with hardwood as well, but you want to look something really thin. So for all of the cutting boards that I showed you in the beginning of this video, we use 1/16 inch. You could also go with an 1/8 inch if you're feeling like that's something you want to do, but 1/16 inch will work just fine. So we'll go back to Easel here, and we'll start working on our design. So let's go ahead and add in an image trace. This is a feature that we've used previously where you can add images from your computer, from Facebook, from Google itself. We'll go ahead and hit upload file here. And I'm going to use the web image search to search for Illinois State. Okay, we'll pull that up. As we talked about previously, when you're looking for an image to import with the image import tool, it's good to find something with a high contrast. So even though I've got a yellow version here, that probably won't do so well with the white background. I've also got this one with a bunch of different colors, so I'm going to stay away from that. But this blue one looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. We've talked previously about some of the settings that are involved with image trace, including threshold and smoothing. Smoothing helps to make sure that all these sort of sharp parts are smoothed down. So for the sake of building the tutorial, I'm just going to leave this as it is. But please remember when you're getting ready to make a carve that these are important features to consider. I'm going to go ahead and import this into my project. All right, there we have it. So what I'm going to do now is use an app that we have in our apps menu called Inlay Generator. There are lots of different ways to make inlays. We have built an app for you to make it really easy to get the perfect fitting inlay every time. It does require a little bit of attention to your machine and making sure that the settings that work for your machine are equivalent to what you choose when you use the Inlay app, but you can always do a test. I would suggest doing maybe something small like a circle with a circle pocket, just so you can learn the settings that we want to use on your specific machine. But like I said, for the sake of this webinar, I'm just going to walk you through the steps on how to get this ready for you to start carving. So the number one thing to make sure of when you are using the app for the inlay generator is to make sure that your bit size is equivalent to the bit that you're actually going to use in your machine. In this case, I'm going to stick with an 1/8 inch bit. I found in previous inlay attempts, it is really important to try to use the same size bit for your entire project. If you try to change your bit during the carve or do like a 2-step carve for inlays, it just gets a little bit complicated and it's hard to make sure that those tolerances stay the same. So for this project, I've got my machine set to an 1/8 inch bit. That's perfect. And now I'm going to go ahead and use the inlay generator to make sure that those settings stay the same. So here's my state of Illinois. When you use the inlay generator, make sure you have the state selected or the object selected that you want to make the inlay of. We'll go up here to apps, and I'm going to scroll down to inlay generator, this one with the maple leaf. So a couple different settings show up when you open up the inlay generator. The one I talked about was bit size, right? So I want to make sure the bit size that's here matches what I have for my project. In this case, we're all set because 0.125 is equivalent to an 1/8 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. The most important setting to use is tolerance. Tolerance determines how well your two pieces are going to fit together. So if you have a high tolerance, that's going to make your pieces fit together looser. In other words, there's going to be a little bit of a gap between the pocket and the insert. If you decrease the tolerance, that will make your parts fit more tightly. And with inlays, it's important to try to get a really tight fit right from the get-go, but you also don't want to make it so tight that you can't fit the insert into the pocket. So tolerance is something, like I said, you might want to play around with a little bit on your machine to find out what tolerance works best for your particular machine. All machines are a little bit different, so make sure you play around with this before you try to, use a nice piece of wood to make your inlay. So while I will come back and talk a little bit more about tolerance at the end of the video, for now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this at the default. So go ahead and import that. Now you can see what happened when I used the inlay generator is I have both an outside cut here, and I have a fill cut here, as well as my original design. So for now, I'm just going to set this original design over here, and I'm going to set this all the way to 0. Now by doing that, even though it's off the screen, because it's white, my machine will not try to carve this piece. So this is safe over here, and it just means that when I go to hit simulate, even though it's going to look a little weird right now, you can see that the simulate feature does not show this shape over here. So we frequently use this blue area, and setting shapes to white is a good way to kind of keep our project organized while we're working with more complex designs. So that's something to keep in mind as you start designing your project as well. All right, so as I said, the Inlay app gave us 2 pieces here. The first piece is going to be the pocket. It's the fill shape. And the second piece here is going to be the insert. Now, it doesn't make sense for me to try to carve the insert in the same page as the cutting board itself, because I want this to be a different piece of wood, which means I'm going to go ahead and have to open this up in a new file. Now, one other thing that's important to keep in mind is that most people, when they do inlays, they like to play around with these settings here. Most inlays would require you to use an outside cut if you don't use the Inlay app generator, because that way you can make sure that the piece that you're cutting is the exact same size as your pocket. But the great thing about the Inlay generator app is there's no need to use outside. The way it imports is already formatted correctly so that you can cut it with its standard settings that show up as soon as you use the Inlay generator app. And this is going to be the best way to make sure you get the perfect fit. So there's no need to mess around with any of these settings. Just go ahead and use them exactly as they are. The other thing that's important to know is these shapes are designed to only work with that bit that I've selected in the Inlay generator app, which means if I suddenly decide I want to try to carve this with a 16th inch bit, my files are not going to work correctly. So it's important to make sure that you stick with the bit settings that you use when you created the inlay in the Inlay Generator app. However, if you decide you want to change that, it's best to just delete these shapes, go back to the original file, and redo the Inlay Generator app with those new settings. So those are just important things to keep in mind. So now that I've got these all set here, like I said, I'm going to want to move this piece into a separate project. So for the sake of making sure I can keep this all organized, I'm going to change this file to be called Pocket and Outside. So now I know this project is going to be reserved for just my template. So just go ahead and design here. I take my shape. I found this rotation tool to be incredibly useful when I've been doing my cutting boards. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this to 90 to rotate that nicely. And I'll just place it here for now. If I select multiple shapes by just clicking and dragging, you can see I've got my template selected and I have my shape selected. My align tools come up here, so I can go ahead and work on getting those centered in the right space. So now I can guarantee that this shape is centered in this cutting board. All right, awesome. So I'm gonna make a copy of this project so that I can keep this shape exactly the way it is and make sure that it's intact for when I am looking to do my insert carve. So I'm just gonna go up here to File. I'm gonna make a copy of this project. All right, so you can see all my same parts are still here, which is good, except I don't need this part anymore at all because this project is only going to be called the insert. So I'll just rename it so that when I go to do my carving, it's all good and making sense to me. All right, so now I've got my insert, it should be ready to go. Another thing to keep in mind is that because this is going to be on a thinner piece of material, I should make sure that I change all my settings up here. My material dimensions are going to be the same, but let's use a different piece of wood. I really like the bamboo that we sell in our store, so I'm gonna go ahead and go with that because I think it's a really beautiful, you can kind of see it even here, it's just got a really beautiful texture to it. If you haven't tried that out, it's a really nice piece of wood and it cuts very, very well on a carving machine. It's nice and it's soft, but it's also durable. So I've got that changed, but I do need to change the thickness over here. So like I said, I'll be using a 16th inch piece of bamboo for this project. So I'm gonna go ahead and change that material thickness. All right, so you can see here, this is looking good so far. If you've joined us in previous Easel Lives, you'll know that one of the things that we talked about is how tabs can be a real pain when you're trying to carve something. So we frequently advise you to use double stick tape. Well, double stick tape is not always the best way to go when you're trying to carve a really, really thin piece of material like this. We found when we were making our inlays that it really helped to use the tabs because it allowed the piece to stay secure inside the cutting surface, but it also was really, really easy to clean when we were all done because the material was so thin. So let's just make sure. I was close, but let's just make that. So in this particular case, I'm actually going to leave the tabs on this file. One thing to keep in mind is that you can change these settings here to make sure that they are, that your tabs are easier to cut. So maybe I'll just drop this down a little bit. It's not quite the same thickness as my material. And I think I'm going to stick with 4. Another thing when using tabs is it's good to make sure that your tabs don't fall in really awkward places. Like that might be a really hard part for me to finish because it's on a curve. But these tabs here look really good. So I'm going to make sure that these stay on flat parts. And then I'll just see if I can reposition these tabs. Again, just click and drag. Feel free to move them around. I'm just going to try to move these to slightly more smooth parts that'll be easier for me to clean as soon as I'm done cutting them out. So the tabs will ensure, as you can see from this image over here, the tabs will ensure that my state of Illinois stays completely secured inside the stock material around it so that it doesn't pull up when it's cutting and it doesn't shift at all. That would be a real bad thing to have happen with an inlay and probably a pretty tricky situation to try to fix when you are trying to get that insert to then fit into the pocket. So now that I have that all set, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that our pocket is all set to go as well. So you can see here, I've set this to be 0.0625. So that is going to be the thickness of my insert. Again, it's always good though to make sure you measure your material with a digital calipers are great to use. The reason it's really important with inlays is because, you know, being makers, we like to try and do the best work possible with the least amount of finishing work. So by making sure that this Z, your material depth, is the exact same thickness as what you're looking to do, that's going to make sure that that insert fits in the pocket nice and smooth, and hopefully you don't have to sand the surface off too much. So if I go back here, I can now go ahead and delete this insert because I've got that in my other project. And since I have this all ready to go, one thing I want to make sure is that the depth of this pocket matches the thickness of my insert. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and use the exact measurement here and just plug that in to be 0.0625. You can hardly see it here, but it is showing that shape a little bit on my simulate side. So that should be all set to go. And that, I've got all my settings set correctly in terms of my material thickness, my different types of materials, and my bit sizes. So those are all good to go. And you can see now if I hit simulate, it's only going to take about 40 minutes to carve that out, which is actually pretty good. That's a pretty quick carve, I think. I could also probably look at maybe using a straight cut flute. You can see it's the exact same bit diameter, which is very helpful. That might even drop it down a little bit more. Yeah, now we're only looking at 18 minutes. So we had used straight cut bits on all of the inlays that I showed you previously, and we did find the finishing to be really well done on that. I would advise you, if you are looking at using a specific kind of bit, I would use the same bit, even if it's the same bit diameter, try to use the same bit for both your pocket and your insert. That's really important to make sure those stay the same. So both of these projects are now ready to fill, which is super great. Pretty quick and easy project. You can see, you know, somebody from the state of Illinois is going to be happy to bring this home. And let's go ahead. I want to just show you a few more things here, if you don't mind. So one of the things I want to talk about are some common issues that you're going to find with doing inlays. And it's a learning game, right? I mean, we're all makers. We all enjoy the learning curve. So as I'm sure you've already experienced, there are some things you've got to kind of figure out as you go. So one of the biggest issues with inlays is making sure that your pieces fit together. As I already mentioned, the tolerance is going to be really important in making that happen. In all the inlays that we did here, we found that our machines worked really well with a tolerance of 0.002. And what that did is it allowed us to have the pieces so that when we're trying to fit them in, they don't quite fit, but when we are able to apply pressure to them evenly, it does work really well and they fit really snugly, and we've been really happy with the way that they've turned out. So as a quick example here is a little demo that we carved out, a little heart and a little box here. So you can see as I try to put this in, I have some issues with trying to get all the sides in at once, but it seems like it wants to go. So the best thing that we've found to do is to try to lay the piece on as evenly as possible, and then use a clear sheet of acrylic, like we have here, put that on top of it, and just apply pressure. I'm not going to try and do it now because I don't think you guys are really going to be able to see it, but apply even pressure. We found with bigger inlays, you can even just like step on the acrylic to push it into place, or you know, something this small, I could probably just put it on a table and try to insert it that way. And the thing about inlays is that it's almost better if you can't quite get them to fit, because if you have them too loose, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to fill in those gaps. You might have to get some wood putty or some kind of thing to make sure you fill in those gaps. It could also, especially in cutting boards, you might have some risk of bacteria getting in there or some kind of issue with that. So the closer the fit, the better that is. Now, if you're really, really close, you can't quite get it, there are some things that you can do, obviously. We have a wood finishing kit that you can buy on our store that includes mineral oil, a sanding block, and also a rag so that you can get a really nice finish. Sanding blocks are great. Sand down some of the edges that you think might be causing you a little bit of trouble trying to get that insert to fit, and go ahead and try again. It doesn't really take a lot in a lot of cases, but you should be able to see when you're trying to get that piece in where your troubled areas are. So a little bit of sanding can go a long way in terms of getting a really nice finish. The other thing that I really recommend doing, as I kind of showed you earlier, is getting some mineral oil. Mineral oil, especially for cutting boards, you get a really nice food-safe finish. We do sell this in our store as well, and you just take a little rag. It doesn't take a lot at all, and you can go from getting your project to look from this to something like this. You can really see all the grains, which is beautiful. I just love the way walnut looks when it's got oil on it. And this, so you can see the color difference and just the overall kind of completeness of this cutting board as opposed to an unfinished cutting board. So that's something really important to keep in mind. The other thing that we used, which is most people have this available in their shop already, is we just use a little bit of wood glue to get the insert to hold inside the pocket. All you got to do is just put a little wood glue here, a little wood glue on the back of this insert, and use that when you press in. We found the wood glue to hold really well, even after we've sanded everything down and gotten it ready to go. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Just a little bit of wood glue is the best way to keep your pocket, or keep your insert inside your pocket. In terms of specific woods to use when you're looking at getting a cutting board finished, I would suggest doing a little bit of research. We all had to do a little bit of research to try to figure out what would work best for our particular projects. But we did find, hardwoods tend to be better. I would stay away from oak because it's very porous, and that's like breeding ground for bacteria. So do a little bit of research, stick with hardwoods if possible. Again, no oak, no softwoods. You want to make sure that you have a food safe product that's also going to last you a really long time, or your gift giving person a really long time. So that's something to keep in mind. I know a lot of you have been active on the chat today, which is awesome. Feel free to leave feedback, comments over there. If you have anything that you would like me to address on the air, please go ahead now and add that in the chat so that I can get that question while I walk through one more thing. One thing we talked about when we were promoting this Easel Live is that we wanted to show you how to do a two-stage insert. In other words, we want to show you how to take your standard Illinois cutting board and add a little heart over your favorite place in Illinois. So we're going to show you how to do this. It's a little more of an advanced technique. If you follow the steps, it's very easy to do, and you've already gotten the tools. You already know how to do the basic insert. So as I walk through this, feel free to add your questions in the chat if you'd like me to address them on the air, and I'd be happy to do that when I finish this up. So let's go ahead, let's go back into Easel, and let's take a look at what we can do for getting that all started. So to make things easy, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go back to my basic cutting board here. I'm just going to clear the board a little bit. So here I am back in my designing, and I want to make sure that I'm able to get my heart in place. So I'm going to design everything over here in the blue. It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, but it's a really good way to keep, like I said, keep your project organized and make sure I have everything. So I'm going to start off by just making all the shapes that I'm going to need in order to build this inlay. So first I'm going to go into the icons, because there's a little heart in here that we've been using for pretty much all of our cutting board projects. And there it is. So what I'd like to do is have my final project look something like this, right? I'd like to have this be one inlay, and then this be the second inlay. So make that heart a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So I'm going to put that over Chicago, where we're located here. And what I'm going to want to do now is I'm going to want to make sure that everything is white. So what I'm going to call this is basically like my base project. So I'm going to always leave this file completely intact the way it is. And instead, I'm going to just make a copy of these items. So on my keyboard, just going to use either Command-C or Control-C, and then Control or Command-V, whichever, if you have a Mac or Windows. So you can see now I've replicated this. You can also always use, cut and paste inside Easel here. And first, I'm going to start off by making my overall pocket. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead, and that pocket is going to be the same shape as the heart and the stake combined. It's going to be one solid pocket that doesn't account for the fact that I have to use 2 pieces of wood. So now that I have these 2, I'm going to go ahead and hit edit and combine. So that brings these 2 pieces together into one object. And now, so that's going to be the first part that I'm going to need. The second part that I'm going to need is the state of Illinois with the heart part carved out of it, because this is going to be in a separate piece of wood. So I'm going to go ahead, do the same thing, copy and paste, and move that over here. So since I want the heart to be cut out of the state of Illinois, I'm only going to add depth to one part of this shape. If you've watched previous Easel Live videos, you can remember that we often use the white color to act as a masking to show the machine what parts we don't want to carve. And this is doing the exact same thing. All we want is for this gray area to be cut out of one of the colors, let's say cherry. So I want this to be cut out in cherry wood, and then I'll do this in a different color, maybe in the bamboo or the padauk or something like that. So when I combine these 2 shapes now, you can see that that's exactly what it's going to do. It basically took the shape of the heart out of the part of Illinois so that this is going to be my insert. So for now, I'm just going to make it a slightly different color so we can keep track of all these different parts. All right, so now I've got my pocket, I've got my one insert, and now the only other element I'm going to need is my little heart. So I'm going to bring that over here too, and now I've got all 3 parts that I need. Now, the tricky thing is that I need to try and keep these organized when I start using the Inlay generator app. As I said, this is my original file, so I'm not going to touch this at all, but I am going to need to use the Inlay generator app on all 3 of these files. So we'll start with this one, and we'll go into our apps, Inlay generator. I'm going to keep the tolerance at this, like I said, and the bit size is 1/8 inch. That's perfect. And you can see it gave me 2 files. Now, since this is the overall pocket of the project, I don't need the outline cut out. So I'm just going to delete that. I'll go over here. I'll get this rotated and put on my template. And we'll just set it there for now. So you can see that's going to be where my pocket goes on the cutting board. The second shape I'm going to need to make is this piece, which is actually going to be an outline. But when you use the Inlay generator app, all your shapes always need to be fills. The Inlay generator app does not work if you try to do an inlay of an outline shape. So it's important to make sure, even when you want to cut out an outline afterwards, it's important to design with this object as a fill for now. So I'll go back into my apps. I'll pull up the Inlay generator. Tolerance and bit size are the same as my other one. That's perfect. And I can import these items now. Like I said, I don't need the pocket in this particular shape because this is going to be the piece that I want to cut out. I see my tabs are here. So when I go to move this, I can make sure that this is all, move those tabs around, get them in good spots. And so now I've got this. So for the sake of ease, I'm just going to delete that file and put this one up here so that I can keep track of all my parts. And last but not least, I've got my little heart. One more time, Inlay generator, make sure my settings are the same, and I'll import that as well. So I don't need this, and I don't need this. I just need my cutout heart. All right, great. That might be too many tabs for a heart. Let's stick with 2 on the heart. All right. So there are the 3 pieces that I'm going to need, right? My pocket, my Illinois insert, and my heart insert. So I'll go ahead, I'll make another copy. And then I'm just going to change this to Illinois cutout, cutting board, and I'll name it Illinois cutout, or Illinois insert, that's better. I delete this part of the file, delete this part of the file, and I don't need the heart either. I'll bring this guy down, make sure that's all ready to carve, and just set it there for now. So this will be all set to carve. I want to make sure I come back over here again, change my material settings, and I'll make sure to change my Stupid bingo. That sounds good. I do not know. Oh, I know what I did. Don't forget decimals, people. Okay. There we go. That's better. All right. So that's all set to carve. And now I'll make one more copy of this for my heart, which, like I said, is going to be on a different piece of material. So we get that nice, cool 3 colors on our inlay. So I'll go ahead and do this, and I'll do heart, insert. Delete these parts that I don't need, and just go carve that heart here. And I don't need these parts either. So now I've got 3 files. I'm gonna go ahead and just turn all of these to be white so that they don't interfere with my simulate button. So now I've got my cutting board with the pocket, my heart insert, and my Illinois insert. And that is going to give us a final product that will include all 3 of those files. And, oh, one second. It's gonna look like this with a slightly bigger heart. So that's gonna be how you do those 3 different colors. Like I said, it's a little bit complex at first, but as long as you follow the steps and you just remember to make sure you have everything that you need in order to make sure the inlays fit really snugly, then you should be able to get one of these pieces without any difficulty. So one of the questions that we had come up was doing text inlays. So I'm gonna just cover that really quickly. I think that they are referencing this cutting board here that I did with the text. And you can see this was done beautifully. My friend Sam really killed it on this, because you can see one of the things that's hard about this is that your pockets and your text are gonna have all these little parts, which makes it a little bit tricky to fit those in. So that's when it's really important, again, know the tolerance of your machine, do a practice first, and be able to take a look at what's gonna work best for your machine in terms of those settings. So let's just go back into Easel really quick, and I can show you how to do the inlay with text. So we'll go back into Easel really quickly, and let's just go ahead, we'll start with a new project. And I'll call this text inlay. So again, I would advise you to just go ahead and use this template if you want to do that. But for this, I'm just going to show you how to do the text itself. So my friend Sam used this font here, Lavendaria, which we use for quite a few things. It's a really nice font. It is a little tricky to carve at times, so make sure it's big enough to not have any of these kinds of issues. But let's go ahead. I think that for this particular project, let's see if a 16th will do the trick. Yep, perfect. So I want to make sure that all my materials are going to be, all my inlays are going to be set with this 1/16 inch. So let's just say, what would be a good thing to put on my text? I'm just going to go ahead and do my husband and I. We'll just do our initials, M&S, Mo and Sam. All right, so that would be something cool to put on an inlay, good wedding present. And all I'm gonna do here is go back into the app menu, do the inlay generator, and it's going to do the exact same thing. It's gonna provide me with both the pocket shape and the insert shape. It's gonna be a little bit tricky when you try to carve these out, because these are going to carve in 3 different pieces. So just keep that in mind, but I can show you some tips on how to save material when you're doing that. As I said in my earlier in the video, we found that a tolerance of 0.002, at least for our machines, has worked out really, really well. So just to show you how that's done, I'm gonna go ahead and change that for right now. So now I'll go ahead, I'm gonna go ahead and insert these, and I'll pull them off to the side for right now. And I'll put this down here for my standard original copy of the project. So now I've got these. This, as I mentioned, is going to be my pocket. So even though my cutting board is set to be at 0.05, I'm sure that this is going to be set to something like 1/8 of an inch again. So we'll go ahead and set the depth down to that. And then it's going to be the same thing with this. is I will just be able to use this. And I'm curious about something now, actually. I'm wondering if I can explode these parts. But I think what I actually, let's back up a second. Let's back up. Let's go ahead and pull this back up here. I'm going to go ahead and explode this first. And now I'm going to make a copy. So now, let's keep everybody together here. Control Z, my favorite tool in Easel. Go ahead and undo all the mistakes that I make. All right, so now that I've exploded it, I've got those 3 separate parts. So let's say, you know, these are kind of far apart. I'm gonna go ahead and just move them together a little bit closer. My husband and I like each other well enough. We can have our initials be a little closer together. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and combine these for the sake of making my pocket. So I will go to, go to Edit, Combine. And now I'm gonna go ahead and do Inlay Generator. And this is gonna be just for my pocket. Okay, go ahead and import that. And so there's my pocket. And then I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna go back over here, make a copy. Oops. I'm gonna go ahead and do my inlay generator one last time. Change this to be the same. And now what I've done, oops, not that. Darn it, didn't work the way I wanted to. I wanted to try and explode it, but you might be able to, don't quote me on this because I've not actually tried this, but it might be possible to go ahead and use the exploder on this and set it back to being on path, and that might work correctly. And the only reason you would want to do that is just to save space when you're carving. But I'm thinking that I'm not sure if that is actually going to give you a good inlay. So that would be something to investigate. But all that I would do then when I'm carving is try to get these pieces even closer together so that I can save some of my material. That would be something worth investigating. I'm not actually sure how it would work when you use the Exploder app after using the inlay generator. That's something I'll have to check on. But you can see that all that it's really allowed me to do is to get these pieces closer together so that when I carve, I can use the least amount of material. Essentially though, when you cut an inlay with text, it's going to be exactly the same process as when you do an inlay with any other shape. So in that sense, you can just go ahead and keep using those same inlay tool apps in order to create a text insert for the cutting board. Well, it doesn't sound like there are any more questions, so I just wanted to go ahead and thank everybody for joining us. This was our first time pushing this out to all the Easel users, and we really hope that you learned something here or at least got some inspiration for something you might be able to do for a gift or a future project. Again, my name is Mo. I work in the customer success department here at Inventables. I'll be happy to help you if you need anything. You can feel free to reach out to us at help@inventables.com. We also have an entire forum thread dedicated to this particular project. You can search for it by searching for inserts or insert cutting boards with a live feature. My friend John McWhorter posted that, so you should be able to find that in the project section of the forum. And you can feel free to share all the projects that you've made related to inlays in that section as well. Again, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat. We'll be happy to be on for a few more minutes to address those. And you can always reach out to us at help@inventables.com, and we'll be happy to provide any kind of assistance that we can. We really appreciate your feedback, both good and bad. So feel free to leave that at help@inventables as well, or you can leave that in the chat for us and we'll be able to take a look, see if this is something that you guys like doing, or if there's some other thing that you would like to see from us to help you learn Easel and 3D carving and how to use our machines. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm not sure if we're gonna have another one before the holiday season hits, so I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, all those good things. And we hope to see you again in the new year. Thanks again.